lecture through, go through the lecture, and then afterwards, hopefully, we'll have a couple of minutes to, if you have any questions. So, this question, why is singing important to children and youth? I made a discovery some 4 years ago in my school. I have a school of about 120 students, singing students, in all age groups, from children to sometimes even people over 50, but that's actually getting less and less because we have a limited amount of money to work with, so we actually now focus always more and more on the younger generation, and with no problems filling up the school, we're actually focusing always more and more on younger and younger people. So I'm getting always more and more also focused on young people and their problems and the way that our school can use singing in order to do something more for them than just make music and improve their lives. Now, 4 years ago, I found out something, and I became very conscious about the way I had been working with my school and in what path I should possibly be taking that school in the future. Singing, one can say that singing is in Iceland quite an important thing. It's been all through the 20th and the 21st century. It's been one of the sort of major art forms. We are quite occupied with telling stories, and I guess that's the reason also that musicals and opera are quite popular in Iceland. Musicals are almost performed in every school nowadays, in some sort of way, in grammar schools, in colleges as well, and it's become really, really popular to sort of combine the two art forms together. Choir singing is really big in Iceland. I will tell you a bit more about that, and there are about 500 students in singing at the moment in Iceland, give or take. It varies a bit from one year to another. Now, despite music, classical music, only coming to Iceland really around maybe middle of the 19th century, and only starting really to be on a professional level, I would say probably from the beginning of the 20th century, we've been quite successful with music. And I guess that has something to do with our tradition and our roots in culture, in storytelling. It comes from the rhymes possibly as well. We used to sing a lot of the rhymes in very, very simple kind of way, simple melodic way in our living rooms when in the maybe 16th, 17th, 18th century. And I guess that has brought us caused that music has become really important in Iceland. Nowadays, we have people like Hildur Guðnadóttir. She is the first person, I think, in the world to win all the major film prizes for music. And then of course, somebody like Björk, that you will probably most of you know. Anna Þorvaldsdóttir, Víkingur Ólafsson, Jóhann Jóhannsson, Daniel Bjarnason, all fantastic musicians that make really huge international careers. So we can say that music is really important in Iceland and has been that for the major part of the 20th and the 21st century. We're very proud of our musicians, and we can say that all these big names also have helped now getting authorities to understand the importance of the music industry, and we are sort of starting to see always more and more funds opening up for the arts. Now, the first people to make international careers were opera singers. Most of them went to Denmark to start with, and make big careers there. Some of them went south. We had Peter Jónsson, for example, who went to Germany to make a big career, and Maria Markan, who sang at the Metropolitan around the middle of the 20th century. So quite a lot of people in that field actually were the first people to perceive an international music career. And we can say today that music definitely has a strong impact on our economy. And like I said, it probably comes from the storytelling tradition, quite a lot of it. We have about 1.3% Icelanders singing in choruses, in about 200 choirs, probably even more. So, and there are all sorts of choruses. Now, what is it with children and youth that is so helpful for young people? It's been 12,000. It's estimated since 1963. The increase in students studying music in Iceland is probably around 12,000 students all over the country, and evidence suggests that music education actually increases the ability for children to have an academic achievement. And there's been evidence found that music education also supports other factors of success in academic terms, such as language development when they're younger. However, in modern times we have a lot of problems too, and we have a large number of people in Iceland dealing with anxiety, problems with social skills, general mental health issues, drugs and alcohol abuse, all of these problems, ADHD, all of these sort of problems that the modern times are offering us. And of course, my school is no different from others. We also have that. However, I realized in September 2018 that probably the percentage of kids coming to our school was higher than the average in Iceland. We had more of children fighting anxiety, autism, or having any of these mentioned problems. And it's estimated that about a quarter of Icelanders are sort of dealing with these kind of issues, but 1/3 of our school, at least, probably a bit more even, were fighting some sort of, or dealing with some of these issues. So I started reading and finding out why, what is it? What draws them to us? And we found out, of course, then when I Googled it, I had some 150, 200, 250,000 hits. So I was quite surprised, and I started reading. Started finding all these kind of articles about this. What happens to us when we sing? We produce hormones, and we would have sentences in those articles that are like that. Neuroscience of Singing shows that when we sing, our neurotransmitters connect in new and different ways. It fires up a right temporal lobe in our brain, releasing endorphins that make us smarter, happier, healthier, and more creative. All very good, and when I started thinking about it, I saw children or youth or people coming into our schools having problems, and I actually saw them change in the period of maybe 6-7 months in our school. I would see people change to the better. They would be feeling better, they would be happier, and I started, is there really something to this? Is this something that we maybe need to go do something further with? So, after doing some digging and finding things out, I started talking to my teachers, and they all felt the same way. They felt sometimes they were like psychiatrists in lessons. Some of the lessons would be only talking, only because people had some problems and they wouldn't be able to sing, and it would take maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes to get them to sing, and then when they would do that, they would start feeling better. This happened again and again. And some of our teachers, of course, were better at it than others, so we sort of started seeing that those who are relating to this and starting to understand this, they, of course, cope better with it. Now, there had also been, of course, all kinds of research being done about these, what I mentioned before, the possible link between music education and having more success in school. But there has never really been found a link between the two. The actual endorphins that might possibly be created while we make music and sing possibly in a group. That seems to be the most sort of efficient way of getting these happiness endorphin or hormones to work. And I don't know if there's ever been, I've never found anything linking the two. And I'm really curious to know, of course, if that is possibly the case. I know there is some upcoming research, or research probably going on at the moment by Dr. Helga Rut Guðmundsdóttir, and she's now working on a big research about to try to find out how singing with young children actually helps them to develop linguistic skills. And I think that is one of the things what we've seen in Iceland. We've had more problems with boys reading, for example, reading skills. And at the same time, we have had an increase in children singing in the morning. It used to be in the old days that children would come to school and they would start their day with singing like 4 or 5, 6, 7 songs maybe, and then they would go into class. And that's more or less stopped in Iceland. And at the same time, we've seen people having more problems with language and more problems with reading. And possibly there is a way of maybe getting or turning that around and trying to get that to work better in the future. Now, I take here 2 large amateur choirs because I know them, and I know what kind of effect singing has on the males that actually sing there. And I suppose it doesn't really matter what age you are, if you are singing, it'll have the same effect on children and youth as that has to them. Now, there are 2 big male choirs in Reykjavik. I would say approximately 60 male singers in each one. And they show up twice a week for a rehearsal. After a long day, these are amateur choirs. So they show up after a long day at work, and these are like, this would be somebody who works for the city, digging holes, or it could be somebody working at a computer all day, somebody from the National Monetary Bank. These are guys that come out of completely different situations during the day. They meet there, they sing together, they laugh together in the pause, and they all have the same story to tell when I ask them. Why do they come? It's always the same reason. Because when I come tired in the evening after my workday and I go to that rehearsal, I go in there, I enjoy it so thoroughly that when I come out, I feel refreshed. I look forward to the next rehearsal. I just feel like a new man. And I think that actually goes for a lot of the approximately 4,500 people that are estimated to be singing in choirs in Iceland. That is the experience that they have. And that's why they do it. That's why they go. That's why they always show up for rehearsals. And of course, during the COVID epidemic, all of them, of course, couldn't go to the rehearsals. And they've all said, it was terrible. It was a horrible time that we had. Because I didn't get my social sort of meeting and singing together. And we were trying to do it through Zoom, but it didn't do it for me. And just wasn't the same. This was not the same group meeting. There was one of the articles that I read once that maintained that they had a research on chorus members. And they took the pulse while they were singing. And during a song, the heartbeats would synchronize. They would close in on one another. It would not synchronize completely, but they would get more unison in the heartbeat than when they were not singing. Then they would be all over the place. But when they sang together, it's very, I don't know. There's something to it. And of course, I don't know if there's been done more research on that, but it's quite interesting. Now, realizing how important this singing is for the mental health, I started, of course, doing all kinds of research and asking around. And I met a couple of people that were actually singing teachers in our school, a singing teacher who's a social worker as well, and another one who's a psychiatrist. And we sort of funded a little group and started sort of having a look at how we could work with this in the future. And then, of course, COVID came, so we didn't really get far from it, but I will come to it later. We did a little bit of work around that. Now, in 2019, there was this report from Copenhagen that actually World Health Organization did. 3,000 studies and hundreds of papers that were actually presented in that research. Overall findings demonstrated the art can potentially impact both mental and physical health. Not only mental health, but also physical health. And of course they had like numerous examples of that. Now I had started this professional team within the school. I started a dialogue also with my authorities as an aftermath of this thing coming from World Health Organization. And we sort of had a few courses also with some specialists, with my teachers, so they could actually cope a little better with having lessons where they would see that the student obviously had some problems. So we started sort of creating the first guidelines for our people to treat that. And we made a survey as well with the teachers. Now, of course, you know, COVID came, and I'd actually gone to Oldborough for a seminar called Singing and Mental Health, where I had a little presentation of my ideas. This is the outcome of the studies that we did in our old school. What were the feelings of our own students? And obviously, they agreed. The green one is very agreeing to that question: increased self-confidence while studying at the Sigurður Demis Academy of Singing, were, of course, way more than actually nobody said that they did not feel it. A couple of people said, I can't really sense it, but most of them said either, yes, I agree, or I agree very much. Singing and acting improves mental well-being. All of them agreed to that, more or less. So it was quite obvious that those people that we asked, they felt that they actually gained very much in their also sort of well-being through the singing and through the acting as well. So it was a very strong reaction. And of course, this report from the Health Organization also helped me when I had some interviews with my. You will have, of course, you know, it's way too much to read like that, but it was pretty clear that World Health Organization supports changes towards arts being more a part of our lives in order to make our well-being and our life quality better. And that is a health issue. It's not anymore just a question of having fun and enjoying life. It's actually something that we should do in terms to improve health generally in societies. So this is sort of the same sort of assessment that they come to. Now, it has come out that Icelanders actually use quite a lot of antidepressants, and in December, after this thing came out from the World Health Organization, our Prime Minister went to, and a couple of days actually after I had my meeting with her, she went to London as a visit to meet the authorities, and she actually said in that interview that they were interested in checking that out, seeing if we could in the future possibly try to reduce the usage of antidepressants in Iceland with culture, of course with sports as well, but also with culture and using the arts more in order to improve mental health in Iceland, which is kind of interesting. Nothing has happened yet, but we are still to see what actually will come out of it. Iceland uses more antidepressants than neighboring countries, she said. We need to strengthen prevention of depression through sports and the arts. Okay, and of course this seminar that I'd just been in January 2000, just before COVID broke out, we had a very distinct suggestion of this being a very singing being a very helpful thing for mental health. The Brits obviously were using that in many places, and in this one day that I was there, I heard these sort of ideas. Of course, Alzheimer's, you might actually know that people with Alzheimer's disease, they may not recognize their family anymore, but they can sometimes still sing songs with text. They remember that. It's because music has a tendency of sort of circulating around the brain. So there are still something left in the brain, even if this terrible sickness has taken so much toll from them. still they can actually cope with that. So it's quite amazing. And I was also told by somebody who works in a home with old people that live with dementia, that their mental state always becomes so much better the days after that they've had singers or somebody with them for a visit to sing. The next days, they're all in a better sort of shape, so they don't get as aggressive and are easier to work with. So it's kind of amazing in what different areas music can be used. I know people in prison in Britain, they had some programs for them, having them make music, compose their own music, compose their own texts and music, and in order to sort of get them back on track for leaving the prison later on. So it's a part of that program. So all kinds of interesting things. Depression after childbirth, singing for that was quite important, used quite a lot. So it was really interesting to see what people were doing. And now it comes to a very important conclusion, I think. Why is it so important today, exactly today, that we react? I would say, since we know this now, we know what kind of impact it has, and of course, like our doctor in the opera said, there still has to be done more tests and tests. I would say, why is it so important? Yes, it's important because we live in times where the world is changing to a shorter work week. Techniques are taking over some of the duties that we do at work and making them quicker to work out. So we need to find some ways of getting sort of this time that we have on our hands filled with something else than going on the phone or using the computer or watching Netflix. It's time where we need to be, like we are at work, we need to be creative. That's the way to keep our sanity in order. So that's why I think it is quite important that we react on this and see what we can use it for. Of course, we would still be doing sport and still be occupied with that kind of daily life, work and everything. But we might have a whole day in the week more than we had before. And what are we going to do with it? We're just not going to hang around. We don't want to just hang around. And that, again, makes us more important, the artists. I know from our point of view, I think we all agree, we sometimes have that feeling that we go into the arts and we kind of lost causes. We almost step out of society and become artists, and we kind of burden on the society. And I think that feeling is going to disappear completely in about 10 years, because people are going to need people like us. They're going to need us for filling up that time, to teach us, to do art for us, and also do art themselves. And mind you, if we create people that do art on an amateur level, this will also create new audiences. So we will also become more important as artists. So I'm full of confidence and I'm full of optimism towards the future, because I think if we do it right, and there is a strong if, however, maybe it's less of an if in places like Scandinavia, because we have quite a high level of education, and I think we have the tendency of electing people to run our places that actually are sensible people most of the time. And in that aspect, I think we can be quite optimistic about the future, that our business, our livelihood, and our calling, which is maybe the most important thing, that we have a calling to do arts and teach arts, that's going to be more important than it ever was. So you might actually find that out in the future, that these things can work quite well out for us. Now, this is all I had to say, so I thought maybe you want to have some questions. It's actually quicker than I thought. Yeah?
Well, I was just first to hear a bit more about your school, perhaps.
Yeah.
What school it is.
It is the Singing Academy of Academy of Singing. It's a school that we founded about just over 20 years ago, 22 or 3 years ago. It was actually like a grassroots organization at the beginning, and then of course with time we had another school, but that school was a bit sort of conservative. So this school wanted to be more progressive and try to do more for the stage. So in the last sort of 10-15 years since I came there, the school has developed more into the direction of combining the two art forms. So it's quite based on acting as well, especially in the higher sort of educational. But it's only college, it's not university. We thought about, and we sort of tried to raise the issue of having a university level department, but it's not come to it, and it's a bit difficult because it's a very small market. We have a university, an arts academy, and I suppose it's something that is quite difficult to do. However, also I'm kind of the opinion that when you come from Iceland, and if you want to become, for example, if you want to become a singer, really, I think you should actually go abroad. You should go and just learn from going to another country, going to the theater. We don't really have that much option in Iceland of going to the theater, going to the opera, going to concerts as we would have maybe in a place like Vienna or Brussels or Paris or London or whatever. So I always find that my students that really want to become singers, they should actually go abroad and collect some experience and also get more experience on stage, because there are limited possibilities of that in Iceland. Yeah.
Do you have any money for research in your school?
No. It's just me doing it. So and sort of it's more out of love and you know how it is. No, not yet. But I suppose now when COVID has gone, I mean, I literally, it was broken off when COVID started. I was on a track in Aldborough after I came home there. About a week, 10 days later, we actually started rehearsals for the first run of Music in the Brain, and we worked on that. And that was one of the things why I didn't really go ahead with doing anything in the 1.5 months after that. And then in March, of course, everything was just in a lockdown. So since then, it's been really difficult to get anything more done. But I'm hoping, and I'm really interested in trying to start a dialogue with some people, maybe at the university, and see what else can be done. Because I think I know, for example, in the arts academy, in the visual arts, there is interest in the same level as we are teaching. They have an interest in trying to work something, a program, something like that. So and I think let's face it, we are in Iceland. We're in a country of 360,000 people. It's very small. 380 now, they say, but it's mainly because we have so many from abroad working there. Now, it's always going to be a limited amount of people coming to my school. It's always going to be difficult to really get a large group of people that are actually going to perceive a professional career. So most of the people coming to my school will be people that just want to gain something from it, like a better well-being, better life, or just being able to enjoy the arts better and things like that, or being able to sing well in a very good choir instead of a mediocre choir, and things like that. So quite a lot of the people are just searching for something like that, and so I guess there might also be a possibility of having some sort of program within the school that would be sort of a well-being program that actually has maybe more group singing, less private tuition, things like that. So I'm open for that, and I think we need to start opening up to new ways. I know quite a lot of my colleagues have said, look at what happened in Sweden when they started teaching students together and all of that. Of course, that's true, but I think when you have a 9-year-old, for example, why should he have an hour of singing lesson in a week? A little child of 9-year-olds, it's not gonna be able to sing for an hour, not even half an hour. Not really full-bodied. So why? And besides, they're not ready to start working on vocal technique, except only up to a certain amount. So you have to juggle a little bit, and we just have to take it and play it out, and see how it goes. It's not something that I can just decide, now I'm going to do it like that. It just has to, like a plant, grow, and we have to allow it to grow. It's the best thing ever, is just allowing things also to flourish and grow and become, rather than always trying to form it too much. But there's something there. There is something there that we are not using. And I think we should be really, I think everybody should be thinking, what can we do? What is this? We are facing problems. I can tell you in Iceland, I'm really worried about young people. I'm really worried about the state that many are in. And I think we need to get something done about that.
Singing is very healthy.
Yeah.
I think about somebody else. Okay. I think about maybe a cooperation with another Scandinavian university. Would be in Sweden. In Sweden they support art side.
Artistic research.
Much more than in Denmark.
Because I'm not necessarily talking about music therapy, because I'm not really saying that if I sense a student is really in a state and he needs professional help, I would never step into that zone. This is not I'm only saying I can take music and I can work music with you, and as far as that will help you, that will help you. But when it comes to real problems, like problems where people are dealing with real, harming themselves and things like that, we can't do anything about that. We have to leave that to people that actually have the knowledge to do that. This is more a well-being kind of thing, and has something more to do with, also preventing things to happen in the future. And also, of course, I know people with autism or on the autism rows or on the spectrum. It can help them a lot in the process of trying to open up their environment. And it happens. It's nothing that I have to do. It just happens, during the performance and during. I've seen it happen. I haven't done anything different with these people. Maybe I'm a bit more patient, but I don't do anything else but teach them to sing.
Yes,
and it works.
Very right. They have in some schools for children that are 4 to 6 years old in Denmark. I know the leaders. They have some teachers, music teachers for people, children with ADHD or something like that. They sing with them and make music.
I am sure. I'm sure people are starting to use it quite everywhere, and of course,
And there is a big clinic actually in Aarhus. We had him here. This professor is a musician. Peter Woost.
I can imagine that it's being, like I said, in Britain, they're starting to use these things quite a lot. And it's not like they're not using it quite like therapy. It's more, and of course they have maybe social workers and people and psychiatrists working with them, but and psychologists and people that actually have that sort of knowledge to take on the professional problems. But it would be a cooperation then between people. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, before I started studying at the academy with song, I have a master in music science from Aarhus University. And I was actually so lucky that I got to visit Aalborg universities because that's where the music therapy research is in Denmark. We only have it in Aalborg. And I met one of the head researchers, Charlotte Lindgren, where we talked about, she's researching in autism specifically in music therapy. And I wanted to do something about combine it with language, but there was different levels of dyslexia and then aphasia and then, just language difficulties in general, and it didn't matter like which level of difficulty. There were benefits with music therapy in every single level of it. And if we're talking about autism that is so severe that the child is not even able to communicate, just like sit like this, of course you won't get words out of it the same way, but you see the way of communication, that there's so many ways of communicating, and just the fact that you can go from a child that is really, you know, severely socially inadequate to intervene, like be present with another person, can open up and suddenly have eye contact, and then perhaps do a rhythm together, so they won't be able to talk together, but do rhythms together. So it's really, really interesting. I love this part, and I would say actually that Denmark is one of the main research countries in this field, because both, like as you mentioned, Music in the Brain in Aarhus University, but especially also Aalborg University is doing a lot of research and a lot of papers about this. And I think that there.
And of course, you know,
so
this thing that they had in World Health Organization comes from Copenhagen.
Yeah.
So it's obvious like that things are happening there.
Yeah. So, but the question is, how do we go from the research? Because as you also showed the WHO, the paper and everything. So I think actually we are at a point where research is kind of on our side. Like we can prove pretty easily that there is a lot of benefits. The question is just why is it so hard to implement in the school system, and why, as you said, are we going away from it?
Yeah.
Because especially in a country like Denmark, who has like højskole, like the whole idea of højskole is like højskolesangbogen, where you get people together with songs.
I'm probably not going to be doing the tests. I'm probably not going to do that, because I think, like you said, there is plenty of tests already.
So much research,
of course, there are certain things that need to be tested, that need to be researched. But I think, in my case, it's totally come to that place where I say just for myself, I just need to talk to authorities, get a little bit of financing, and start maybe doing a department where I say, now look here, I want to give people a chance that want to come and do something for their own good, and you know, and it's costly. But of course, you know, I know there is interest in, for example, with the unemployment authorities in Iceland to maybe create some sort of a course where people that are actually working towards trying to get back into the working market after having burnout, or that these could be, for example, one of the things that might work there. So I mean, there are I'm already starting that dialogue towards institutions here and there, what can be done and how we can do it. So it will happen, but of course, you know, when you're running a school and when you're, you know, teaching and everything, it's only that much time that you have. But I'm trying now, and I hopefully have now a better, because I've managed to solve some financial problems and things for the school. Now I will have more time on my hand, and of course also having this time where we had COVID, because we taught more or less through the whole COVID situation. We only skipped teaching for we taught online maybe for 2 or 3 weeks. After that we started having kids coming over. But we of course had to do all kinds of adjustments and try to sort of avoid you know, having infectious students around and things like that. So it was quite complicated in organization. So now I have more time on my hands, so I think possibly it's going to be better for me to talk to the authorities too and try to get things done. So, and I think that's the only way we can find out, is also just calling in those people, calling it to action, doing things, and you know, having people there. And then possibly getting also in people that are actually professionals in the things that people are dealing with at every stage, and you know, work with them to see what effect this is having, how this is working. So yes, I hope very much that is going to happen. That it's not just going to be research and all of that, but it's actually going to be a hands-on kind of thing in the future. Any more questions? We have 9-year-olds. We have 9-year-olds. They get about 15 minutes a week solo, and then they have, like, usually they work together 2 or 3. So it's either half an hour, where each gets 15 minutes or 45 minutes. So it varies a bit after groups, and 9 to 12, and then we have 12 to 16, which is kind of sort of teenager age, and then after 16 they go into solo, or they go into solo classical, or they go into musical department.
One more question about, have you found anything about, like, the difference between singing and making music overall, Is there a difference, or is it just it's easier?
I don't know how much research. I think the singing probably has a little bit more because it is quite physical. I know dancing is really strong because it involves the music and it makes you sort of körperlich, physically, work with the music. I suppose there's something also to singing, and of course, like the World Health Organization research, it goes all over the arts. It's visual arts. It's also acting. It's whatever. Also, it is going to museums. Everything. All of this is just good for our health, basically. And they're actually in some places, like in Canada, they're talking about giving inscriptions for going to the museum or to the theater. Just having tickets paid for you, because you're fighting with issues.
There's a lot of talk that young people aren't interested in classical music, let's say, and arts, but I think the opposite. I think it's often just that it is often too expensive, and also that they are afraid to try it. But when they, actually have the opportunity to do that, I think everybody loves it the same way. There is no one that.
It's very funny you should mention that, because we had this opera that we did here, which is maybe not classical music, but it has definitely a classical sort of frame, and we went with this to the grammar schools, to teenagers in Kópavogur and Garðabær, and they were actually quite impressed. They loved it, and they came to us afterwards to speak to us, and it was not like this attitude of opera singer being stiff and old-fashioned and things like that. It wasn't that at all. I think actually young people, quite a lot of them nowadays, they're introduced so little to classical music that they even don't have that sort of front towards it. It's not even that anymore. It used to be, but now it's not even there anymore. So it's actually there is a possibility of getting them interested if you do it the right way, if you do it with that kind of.
Also, you mentioned, I love that it was so positive to hear that you mentioned that in the next 10 years that you enter the profession. It's extremely uplifting to hear, but also I completely agree. And also craftsmanship is going to be so valuable.
Yeah.
And is extremely valuable at the moment, because everything is so electrovized.
Yeah.
And to know something that is a craft, because there is definitely a difference between crafts and musicality. You can be an extremely good craftsman. You can have zero musicality, still be a musician. So that's also interesting. But but if you have both, that is so valuable.
Yeah.
So
it is. Yeah.
Just want to add that.
And of course, it's going to be very much your generation that is going to be taking that ball, because I'm 57. In 10 years, I'm just about to retire. So it's going to be you people that are actually going to be taking that ball. It's going to be yours to take it on, and I'm only preparing some ground now for what is to come. And it's not going to be me working so much in that field, but that also means that you are the people that actually can start thinking about how are we going to implement this, how are we going to do this, so we can actually get to more people and do more good. Because basically, this is kind of missionary kind of thing, what I'm doing. I'm trying to get you also to take that into life, and take that into your studies, and take it into your future plans. Not that I'm saying you're all quite promising as singers. That's definitely that is not what I mean. I had a very good career for many years, but it's not necessarily something that you will be doing the next 50 years or 45 years. So remember, there's going to be sorry.
You can take over the Nordic Song Festival.
That is also going to happen, and Nordic Song Festival also maybe have a future also in that kind of work. I mean, you're doing your children opera and things like that. So all of these things they have a tendency of going into loops, and so that's also why it's important for you. It's probably more important for you than for me. I'm pretty sane, so you need to be the ones taking that sort of ball, and also for yourselves, realizing what you're doing for yourself when you are singing. You are actually giving yourself quite a good treatment for the future. And I remember being a young man, 15, 16 years old, when I started singing. I started singing classical when I was 18. And I was a little troubled, I must say. I had a lot of anxieties. I had a lot of problems. I lost my father when I was 15. That alone was enough for me to... I could have actually gone really off the tracks. Fortunately, I didn't. I think one of the things that helped me a lot is that I discovered, or my brother started studying when I was around 16, 17, and I discovered classical music, and my father had always been playing it, and with my father then being dead, I thought, maybe it's something to it. Maybe I should listen to it. It's honor his memory a bit kind of thing. And I started listening, and then I went to a singing teacher, and it changed my life. And one day, I was suddenly studying, and she said, you have a fantastic voice. You should do something with this voice. And I got all fired up, and in about a year, there was nothing else going to happen in my life. It was a complete turn. And of course, all the worries, all the anxieties and everything, they didn't disappear, but they got somehow more, what should I say, something that I could cope with. Because I could always, go into my music. I could always listen and feel better. And sing myself, of course. So you're doing something really good for yourselves when you are singing. It is something that is actually quite valuable. Okay.
It is something.
Yep.
I also think that some of the future is crossover.
Yeah.
Concerts.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I have sensed that at the conservatory, the wish to work, for example, with actors. The actors wish to work with singers. The singers wish to work with painters. We had a pupil last year who was going at this Kunstakademiet, and his remarks were so interesting about things that, do you see the music in that way? And I think if we start to make concerts also in that way, that we cross over in our concerts, we will also open new rooms. I think that is not all concerts, but some.
I think also with opera days in Iceland, we have sensed also that the actual taste of people, what they would like to see, is also changing. Of course, we still would like to. I still have a book ticket to see Madame Butterfly in London when I go the next once. I will still be able to, and I'm still willing to go to see classical opera. But I find it just as exciting and nice to go and see new opera and things that are being done. And it doesn't have to be a symphony orchestra of 60 people and a big chorus and all kinds of. You can also watch opera that is actually really, really interesting and nice, also newly written and with some maybe obscure sounds and stuff like that. It's all quite interesting if it's done in a good theatrical way. So that is also a positive change for you. So it's a changing world, definitely.
One thing that came to mind that I like when maybe all of us think of what we have in our lives like as our practice, which like if I speak for myself, it's something that is so precious, something that like to go into the practice room and have this moment when you're just, well, of course, also working, because if you're doing it professionally, it's your work as well, but to like with the talking of well-being and maybe to give people the tools to have this kind of practice. Some people meditate, and this could be another like more common thing in people's life, because it's something that so many people really enjoy.
Now, mind you, the English National Opera created a working space for singers to work with patients that have had problems after COVID, breathing. And what did they do? They created sort of a program with the opera singers where these people would hum and sing lullabies. What for? To calm themselves, because the main problems with people after COVID has been lungs and getting the capacity to breathe properly and gets oxygen into your lungs and things like that. And if you sing, you will feel. I have when I feel my student is maybe in some sort of a state of mind that is where it's not feeling all at ease, I have specific rehearsals to do, like really long phrases with piano, just in order to calm them down and let it sit into their body. Because when it sits in the body, it starts being at ease. And that's what they were doing. And that's what you're talking about, really.
No,
You're talking
yes.
about, kind of,
Yeah, to give like
Yeah.
the normal person who is not going to work professionally, but maybe to give them the tools to make a
To do that,
practice.
yeah.
Because it's something
Yeah.
that I could not imagine my life without having that.
Yeah.
And most people don't have this kind of, so it's
In
maybe,
their lives, no.
yeah,
No,
so
yeah.
it's maybe something
Absolutely. Absolutely.
about being
That's what I mean, knowing these kind of rehearsing and singing yourself. I mean, it's so funny. I sang a couple of phrases here before, and it's probably because I had to perform. I'm used to, always when I do my speech for opening the school and closing the school, I always warm up. I never sing. I held a speech, but I always warm up. I wonder why that is. It's because I'm soothing myself. I'm getting my feet on the ground. That's what happens. It's getting myself into the mental state of being able to be in front of people. I just realized that was why I wasn't thinking about tonight. That's why I was singing before. So have we covered it more or less? Or? So we can just go to work. So thank you very much.